Guys, welcome back for another in our series of training videos. Today we're going to talk a little bit about data collection. And I was sitting down with one of the agents here in the office earlier today, and as I began to go through the data collection sheet, what I realized is there are a number of areas that many agents just don't understand the importance of or miss out. And so what I came up with as I was reviewing the data collection sheet is there's a dirty dozen. And so today's video is about the dirty dozen when it comes to data collection. What are the 12 most important things for you to pay attention to when collecting data at the end of a kitchen table presentation with a client? So for starters, number one, right here, household information. We want to go through and get the client's name, their address, their work address, phone number, date of birth. I like to get their social security number as well. Why? This is information that's important to filling out an application. So if there's an opportunity for us to do business later, I want to have that information in advance. I want if I'm a new agent, I'm going to pre-populate that on an application before I meet with the client. If I'm a more senior agent, I'm going to give that to my assistant and have them pre-populate the applications. So in the second appointment, I'm ready to go. But also here, number one, under this household information, personal email. Email is critical for future marketing to existing clients, or if they, for some reason, decide not to make a decision to move forward. I want to capture their email with WFG's new campaign manager. This is a critical piece of information to catch on the first. So that's number one. Number two, we go down to the goals and dreams section right here. This is the biggest area we're going to leverage what's most important to them. What are their whys? What are the things they want to achieve short-term, mid-term, and long-term? And how important is it to them? And why do they want to achieve it? This is where I really begin to get an understanding of what's important to them, why it's important to them. It gives me leverage to complete collecting the data and help them make a decision that is good for them. So that's number two. Moving on. Number three, under income. It's easy to ask about income. Here's what I normally do. I normally ask for what is it that they take home every paycheck after taxes and their employer gets done chipping away at everything. I think a lot of times it's easier to ask for sort of a net number, and then do they get paid every other week or twice a month, whatever the case might be. And that net number is the real number that they work with on a monthly basis. So that's a better number for me when I'm sort of looking at how much money they really bring home every month. But in addition to that, look for the bonuses like tax refund. Do they get a tax refund every year? If so, about how much does it average? How much was it last year? How much was it the year before that? And then what do they typically do with that money? Is that money they put aside to pay property taxes, or does it go to a new patio set or a new sofa set? Like, where does that money go? Because for a lot of families, that's a chunk of money that you can reinfuse into their commitments and help them to achieve goals that a lot of times when clients get that money, they just waste it on stuff that they get excited about, some sort of big purchase. So that's number three. Number four, we're looking at retirement income and what they're planning on doing. Anticipated future income right here. Please, if they work in some sort of city or county job, or they're a teacher, or they're a fireman or a police officer, make sure you get information about their pension. Chances are, especially if they're working for a government agency, the pension's probably going to be there. It's probably not going to go away. So let's make sure we find out what kind of income they're anticipating at what age, so we can incorporate that into the plan. Next, number five. Down here under employment, do you see yourself retiring there at their current place of employment? Number one. Number two, what are your future career plans? These are unbelievable recruiting questions. If you're not asking these questions, it's a great time when you're talking to them about their employment, what they do and why they do it, to probe to see if they'd be a good candidate to invite down as a guest to one of the meetings. So one of the biggest mistakes when we talk about the dirty dozen of collecting data, one of the biggest mistakes people make is they're collecting information purely about somebody's financial situation. And to me, the biggest component of their financial situation is what do they earn? And what they earn is a function of where they work. And so one of the biggest mistakes is people miss out on what a great recruiting opportunity collecting data can be if you learn to ask the right questions. Next, number six, this is my personal opinion. Comes to expenses, complete waste of time. Complete waste of time. Why do I believe it's a waste of time? A couple reasons. Number one, the number one reason you're collecting all of this tedious information about what their expenses are is why? To find out what their discretionary income. Here's what happens over and over and over again. I have new agents sit down in front of me and go, well, I added up all their expenses and their income. It looks like they've got $2,000 a month in discretionary income. No, they don't. Good luck with that. Good luck going back to the family and going, well, I see you have about $2,000 of discretionary. No, they just couldn't remember all their expenses. So you spent probably the majority of your time collecting all this information. At the end of the day, you don't even have a number it's bad data. It's bad information. Number one. Number two, the other challenge with collecting all this information on expenses, it's the number one thing that husbands and wives argue about when you're collecting data. And you don't want them arguing when you're collecting data. So it's like, well, you spend too much on the cable bill. Yes, but you spend too much. It's like, stay out of that. You don't want to cause a fight when you're almost done with your presentation. So I personally, I don't collect this information. I think it's bad data. Well, how do I do it then? I ask them, hey, at the end of the month, when you're done paying all of your bills, about how much money do you have left over in discretionary income? They tell me about $300 on an average month. I put that down. Then when I'm putting the data into the financial needs analysis, what I do is I create a miscellaneous expense number to capture all of this that leaves me with about $300 a month of a discretionary income, if that's what they told me their number was. So I take their income minus the mortgage and the car payment and the credit cards and the insurance and the stuff that they really did give me, and then I create a fictitious miscellaneous expense number until I wind up with a discretionary of income of $300. Hope that makes sense for you. That's number 6. Number 7, we go through all the debts, the mortgage, the car loans, the student loans, all the credit cards, the people that they owe, more recruiting opportunities. The more that people are in debt, the more they need to do our business. They need to make more money. Clearly, they got the spending part handled. What they need to learn is how to make more money. We're the best in the world at that. So these are great recruiting opportunities. We always talk about you want to disturb and intrigue. This is the most disturbing part of the data collection for them. Make sure you disturb them, but make sure you give them the intrigue of what the real solution is. Can stacking their credit cards a certain way and snowballing it, can that be an effective? Sure. But the most effective way is for them to go out and earn more money, and here's the place for them to do that. That's number 7. Number 8 of the Dirty Dozen, proper protection, life insurance. I'm a big fan of the DIME method, and we've got all the right questions here for the DIME, but here's what I like to do. I like to keep it real simple. DIME, husband and wife. So when I ask these questions, I'm asking for both of them. Hey, God forbid something happened to you. Obviously, no amount of money in the world would replace you as a husband or as a father. That's not the purpose of life insurance. But if something did happen to you, let me ask you this. Would you want all of your debts paid off? And when I say debts, I mean, would you want the car loan and the student loan and the credit cards paid off if something happened to you? Or would you want your wife to do? No, I'd want it paid. Yes. I just put a yes there. If something happened to Susie, obviously no amount of money would replace you, Susie. But would you want all the debts paid off, or would you want your husband to own them? She says yes. Boom. I put a yes there. I go from debts to mortgage. Bob, if something happened to you, would you want the mortgage paid off, or would you want Susie to just go on making the mortgage payments? Susie, if something happened to you, would you want the mortgage paid off? I just put a yes or no next to mortgage, the M in DIME. Then I go to education. If something happened to you, Bob, would you want the kids' college education taken care of? All of it, part of it, yes or no? I ask the same question to Susie. Then lastly, I come back to income, the I in DIME. Bob and Susie, if the debts are paid off, the mortgage is paid off, the kids' college education is paid off in the way that you want it to, and something happened to one of you, after all of that, would you want some amount of income, Bob, to go to Susie? Would you want an extra $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 a month to go to Susie if those bills were paid off, or just having those bills paid off, is that enough? Would you want her to go out and get a job and she could make up the rest? And the choice is his. I don't care what she answers, what he answers. Susie, what about you? Would you want some income to go to Bob? Once they've answered those two questions, then I ask them a secondary question. When the kids are out of the nest, when they've graduated college and they've left home, do you still want your spouse to continue to receive that income, or would you change or alter the amount at that time? So a lot of times couples would want more income to go to the spouse while the kids are still at home, while they're going to grade school and middle school and high school and college. But once the kids are gone, some individuals would like to have their spouse have a lower amount of income, some the same. So I want to find that out. We've got great questions here, but I want to make sure I capture all these for both the husband and the wife. I find a lot of times with new agents, they don't ask the DIME method. They don't go through the same questions with the wife when it's just as easy to. Next, number 9 on our Dirty Dozen, asset accumulation. If I go to the doctor and the doctor says, so Christopher, how long do you plan on living? I say, well, you know what, I think I'll probably live to be about 90 or 95. And he knows that I smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day. He, as the expert, should go, you know what, that could happen, but probably not, right? So what's important here in the retirement goals, you as the agent, if a client says that they're going to live to be 70 or 75, you've got to be the expert. I assume for the client they're going to live to be 90 or 95 years old based on how old they are now and how good of how good of a job they do of taking care of themselves. If you ask people how long do you think you'll live, nobody wants to wrap their head around living that long. Nobody wants to think about it. I would rather have 5 years too much money for my clients and they pass away 5 years early than have my clients live 5 years longer than we had planned for and they run out of money. So I, as the expert, me as the doctor, I have to create that number for them. Number two, when it says, well, how much money would you like to live on in today's dollars? A lot of times they'll give you a fictitious number. In other words, Bob's making $6,000 a month and he says, I'm going to retire on $15,000 a month. Bob, sorry, I'm the doctor. I'm not going to accept that number. It just doesn't make sense. You're talking about 2.5 times what you're currently making. So I, as a doctor, got to coach him and come up with a more realistic number. On the other hand, I've seen agents come in and the client gives a superficially low number. For some reason, they live in this fairy tale land where they think in retirement like they're not going to have any bills. And so I, as the expert, tell them, hey, what most financial advisors, what most experts suggest is that you're going to need somewhere between 70 to 90% of your income in retirement. Well, why is that? Because in retirement, some expenses will go down, like perhaps your dry cleaning bill because you're not working anymore. But other expenses will likely go up, like oftentimes healthcare does. So most experts predict that you'll need between 70 to 90% of your income. So when we're putting together your retirement goal, let's put together an income amount that's pretty much in that range. Now, if somebody's younger, they're in their 30s, and maybe they're only making $3,500 a month or $4,000 a month, I might allow them to put down $6,000 or $7,000 a month as a retirement income goal because they have not yet hit their peak earning years. It's early in their career. But I want to make sure it's a goal that we can put together a plan and they can start saving towards today. So that's number 9. Number 10, I already covered. Number 10 is making sure you put down a realistic age, which is 90 or 95 years old as far as how long we want the plan to go to. Number 11, I see this often. People have stocks or mutual funds or bonds or treasury bills, and maybe they got a big chunk of money in one of these things. They've got 10 or 20 or 30 or $40,000. Here's the magic question I always want to ask them. Bob, Sue, I see you have so much money in this stock or whatever. What's the purpose for that asset? Well, a lot of times they'll go, well, I got some company stock and I'm just hanging on to it, or I'm hoping it'll grow, or I'm hoping it'll do this or that. That's not a purpose. What I mean by this is they've got a goal of retiring. They've got a goal of putting their kids through college. They've got an asset here with no purpose. They just want to grow it. That's not a purpose. In other words, if they're not on pace to achieve the retirement goal, if they're not on pace to achieve their kids' college education, then we need to take these assets and realign them, make them purposeful assets. So I always want to ask, what's the purpose of the asset? These are great opportunities for you to move money into other parts of the plan, to front load a GIUL, to increase what they're contributing towards a retirement plan, to increase what they're contributing towards a kids' college education plan. But if you don't ask what's the purpose of it, sometimes people have this weird emotional tie to a certain stock or to a certain money, and they don't want to move it, but there's not a logical, concrete, financial reason for them to keep it there. And so that's a great question. What's the purpose? Okay? That's number 11. Flip over to the back. The dirty dozen. Number one thing that people miss, new agents miss, is they don't ask the 5 commitments. And we've got an outline here for you. First thing you want to do before you get into the 5 commitments is please rate the following on a scale of 1 to 10 between cash flow and emergency and proper protection and debt and retirement. I want to find out when I put together the plan for you, Bob and Susie, of all the things we've talked about tonight. We've talked about all these different things here, right? What are the 2 or 3 that are most important to you? See, I'm never going to ask them what's the most important thing to you because they might go getting out of debt. Well, you know what? That's terrific, but there's not a lot I can do to help with that. So I can ask them what are the 2 or 3 most important. And here's what I know. Retirement's going to show up somewhere in there. College education is going to show up somewhere in there. Insurance is going to show up in there. Why is that important to you? Great. And so now I'm creating leverage so that I can get a strong dollar commitment. So dollar commitment, the time, the do business, the referrals, the BPM, that's all for a different training video, but the 5 commitments are key. So when you're at the data collection stage, here's what happens with new agents. We've just finished a 25 or 30 or sometimes a 40-minute presentation, depending on the client, how many interruptions they had, how many questions they asked. Now it's time to collect data and get the 5 commitments and get out of there. Be strong. Don't fall into the trap of letting one of the dirty dozen, let one of these big 12 mistakes keep you from helping a client make a decision that's good for them. Pay attention to these 12 key areas, and most important, number 12, make sure you hit all 5 commitments strong, and I believe that's going to help you to help more clients, build a bigger business, be more successful, go full-time, and reach your dreams. Appreciate you guys. See you on the next training video.